mind to go to the peak of Africa, but also not regret if you happen to visit the Serengeti National Park, where you'll be able to appreciate the beauty of Tanzania.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And, in the beginning, you mentioned, and you are the first that is mentioning that aspect, is the concept of ethics in the National Biosafety Regulation or something like that.
Can you come again?
Can you show what? Can you show your in the beginning your? Anthropologist, or what does it mean in practice? That is what the issue is.
Well, that's a good question. For any project in the country, you see this, the Environment Management Act doesn't talk of biotechnology or biosafety alone. It talks of other environmental things. But in principle, any project have to be subjected to environmental impact assessment. And for you to have an environmental impact assessment certificate to continue with your project, there must be, these issues must be addressed. And when you conduct an assessment, an environmental impact assessment, these issues have to be considered, socio-economic, cultural, and ethical. And you have to involve experts in this field in conducting these assessments. So
yes, but does it mean that, for instance, that if you have a group in your country, in Tanzania, that is opposing against GMOs because it does not fit in their food habits because of cultural reasons, do they have a voice in it, and will it be taken into account? That has nothing to do with safety. It has to do with culture and ethics. So does that really play a role in the considerations?
Yeah.
Well, because that is the translation of what I see here.
If I get you right, these issues have to be taken in consideration when one has to bring in or when one has to do anything with GMOs. So these issues have to be taken in consideration. Because
because I'm saying this because in Europe we have a lot of discussions because some people want to have cultural and ethical issues in the regulation and it's not allowed until now because they say it has to be scientific, so there's a big issue always. So if Tanzania has already this in its regulations, they have they have a very extended law, so to say. So it's very remarkable.
The role of any government is to protect its citizens, and this includes the cultural and the social and the ethical concerns of the citizens. So if you don't take care of these, then you are not fit to be the government because you are there to protect your people. So that's why we need to make sure these issues are taken on board in whatever development that we do. And that's why there are concerns that are we ready for the GMO? Have we done enough with what we already have? So debates can continue, but development is there, and we are not living in a different world. We have to move with how the world is moving. We welcome development and technology, but again, we can't leave behind our cultural and ethical, the valuable cultural and ethical part or aspect of ours.
Thank you, Tanzania. Zambia?
Good morning. Welcome to the presentation from Zambia. Bear with my voice. It's these things. I'm sensitive to the air con, so please bear with me. I'm presenting on the status of biotechnology and biosafety in Zambia. I'm attached to the National Biosafety Authority. Let's quickly get into the presentation. Zambia signed the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, in 1992, and it was ratified the following year, 1993. And then this did bring about a lot of work with regard to putting in place relevant policy and legislative framework. And then we did have the Biotechnology and Biosafety Policy of 2003, and then work continued, and then in 2004, specifically in April, Zambia acceded to the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, and it came into force the same year, in July 2004. Of course, the protocol does give some guidelines, some principles, which apply to transboundary movement, transit, and several other aspects. Let's look at the policy and legislative environment for biotechnology and biosafety in Zambia. I already alluded to the Biotechnology and Biosafety Policy of 2003. The mission of the Biotechnology and Biosafety Policy is to guide the judicious use and regulation of modern biotechnology for the sustainable development of the nation, with minimum risks to human and animal health, as well as the environment. The objectives to support the development of research and industrial capacity to safely apply biotechnology techniques for the enhancement of the country's well-being. Those are the guiding principles. There are quite a number of them, and one which has been critical, I think, is the first one, the precautionary principle. Of course, the several others are also taken into account in dealing with issues of biotechnology and biosafety. But I think as a country, there's been a lot of precaution on handling issues of GMOs. There could be reasons. We'll look at them at the end of the presentation under the challenges. We do have the Act as well. For us to operationalize the policy, you will need the Act. And in 2007, that was something like 4 years later, after the policy was put in place, the Biosafety Act number 10 of 2007 was also operationalized. It was legislated. And the scope of the Act applies to research, import, development, export, contained use, release, or placement on the market of any GMO, whether it's intended for release into the environment or use as a pharmaceutical, food, feed, processing, or indeed just a product of a GMO. And then we continue. The Act ensures that any activity involving the use of any GMO or product of a GMO prevents any socio-economic impact or harm to human and animal health, or any damage to the environment, non-GMO crop, or biological diversity. And it also endeavors to set and implement standards for the assessment, evaluation, and management of any potential risk involving the use of any GMO or product of a GMO. It goes further to establish the National Biosafety Authority, which is the national competent authority on all matters related to modern biotechnology and GMOs, and it prescribes its powers and functions, and it provides also for the establishment of the for the Scientific Advisory Committee, and it also provides for public participation, information, and consultation. And it also provides for a mechanism for liability and redress for any harm or damage caused to human and animal health. I'm sure this is common to all countries that are represented, the issue of liability and redress. That is the composition of the NBA. We have 13 members, and they are drawn from those different groups of people. We do have, of course, one from the Ministry of Science and Technology, one from the Environment and Natural Resources, Agriculture, Health, Commerce, Trade and Industry, Information. For information is critical, especially for my country. The Ministry of Justice, legislative aspects. We have somebody from the consumer group, a religious group, a farmer group, and indeed traditional authority. The minister does have authority to appoint 2 other persons, and the Act does not dictate what these people should be like, whether they are farmers or whatever. The Act does give authority to the minister to appoint. Now, what are the functions of the National Biosafety Authority? It's basically to receive, respond, and make decisions on any notification and application, and this it does in consultation with the Scientific Advisory Committee. And then also to establish administrative mechanisms to ensure the appropriate handling, dissemination, and storage of documents and data in connection with the processing of applications and notification, as well as other matters connected with the Act. And then the third one, which is critical, you'll see when you get to the challenges, promote public awareness and education. This one is critical. And the fourth one, establish and maintain a database. This we are just beginning to do slowly, very, very slowly indeed, because we need to know which GMOs have we authorized and which ones are we anticipating, which ones are existing in the region, for example. And then this information is critical as it has to be made available to the public. The fifth one is to prescribe criteria, standards, and guidelines. These are crucial. Some of the guidelines are for how even the NBA itself operates, how the IBCs, the Institutional Biosafety Committees operate. And then the sixth one, it takes into account the policy recommendations and other guidelines that the Scientific Advisory Committee makes. Of course, with specific focus on import, export, development, transit, research, content use, and the list goes on. And the seventh one is to cause to establish and appoint. This has been done. All research institutions have actually got standing committees, the Institutional Biosafety Committees. So we think that is the plus. We've also drafted guidelines for those committees, and we've put them in form of the regulations so that they're actually legally mandated to do their job. And the eighth one, to keep any GMO or product of GMO under review, just to be able to see whether these things are posing any risk to human, animal, or indeed biological diversity or the environment. And if they do pose risk, and that is confirmed, is to ban such, whether it's transiting, import, export, development, research, or use or release in Zambia. There's so many functions. Review or make risk assessment, all those are important. Take any measures to protect, all those are important. Designate inspectors, undertake inspections, as well as any other control measures to ensure compliance with this Act. And then carry out any other activity which is necessary or conducive to the performance of its functions. And then the National Biosafety Authority is the National Biosafety Focal Point. This is the competent authority and the Secretariat of the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. That is the Scientific Advisory Committee. If you read our Act, you will see that it emphasizes a lot on the SAC, the Scientific Advisory Committee. It has explained a lot of things. It actually describes what they're supposed to do. And their main role is basically to provide scientific and other technical advice and assistance to the authority, which is the board, the NBA itself. And then it must actually undertake a risk assessment. This is the entry point for all applications for whether it's field trials, products of GMOs, and these are the people who actually go to receive them and review them and make recommendations to the authority. The membership is across the different fields of science, those that are listed over there. We do also have national capacity for surveillance, importation, identification, and use of GMOs. GMOs have been in Zambia for the last 17 years. That's a fact. The Biosafety Authority is actually running behind the GMOs. We do have products of GMOs, that's what I mean. They've been around on our shelves for the past 17 years. And there's been some level of work undertaken by the Zambia Agricultural Research Institute using those acts, which are not really the GMO Act, those that relate to biosafety. Then the Ministry of Health that administers the Food and Drug. They've been authorizing products to be imported, and I believe it was a result of wherever they were coming from, these products, they were not labeled. But now with the coming in of the NBA, since about 2009, been able to identify most of these products that are not labeled, yet they're actually products of GMOs, they contain GMOs. We also have the Ministry of Local Government, the Public Health, specifically wing, that administers the Public Health Act. And then we also have the National Biotechnology Reference Laboratory and National Institute for Scientific and Industrial Research. This one is basically for purposes of, it's a reference laboratory for purposes of GMO detection and some element of GMO research. We do have some skilled manpower, and we're still continuing to do some training, and there's actually recruitment into the NBA taking place right now. This is continuous because we are just trying to set ourselves to be able to handle issues of biotechnology and biosafety appropriately. What is the current status of the NBA? We have the NBA in place and it's functional. The scientific advisory committee is in place and it's functional. We do have an interim secretariat, and then the permanent secretariat is to be operationalized early 2015. People have undergone interviews, and several jobs are going to be offered. And then we do have the NBC House focal point in place. And then we also have some technical activities taking shape. We have inspections. That's how come we're able to know that Zambia has had these things for 17 years. They are labeled, but they're on our shelves. Actually, countries make sure those that export these, they don't label, so that you consume them the same as the non-GM. And then we are currently handling 10 permit applications for importation of GMO products. They've already passed the scientific advisory committee stage. They are now going to the stage of the biosafety authority, the board itself, to receive and consider. Interactions, these have improved. Professor Aida was recently in the country with a big delegation, and I think they did make available a lot of valuable information. They met the board, they presented to the board, they met the farmers, like she did indicate, in Magoya, the cotton farmers. And then they also met several other interest groups at the University of Zambia, which is the biggest university in the country. And we think we are making some inroads with interactions, and we are also interacting with green groups. These green groups, they really have already taken a stand, so we have to cautiously approach the issue. And we think they need to be brought to speed with what is happening in the region and in the world with regard to GMOs. We've done a mapping, a survey of GMO presence, absence, detection along the borders, just to have a feel of how much has happened before the NDA came into place. And we do have this desktop information, and we are able to make decisions arising from that. Several work with regard to guidelines and regulations. We have one approved, the regulations on food, feed, and processing. This one is already up and running. We've made a number of submissions beyond this. There are actually 11. We think these two are almost been approved because of the back and forth between ourselves and the Ministry of Justice. There's one for importation of GMOs, for field testing, propagation, and content use. This one is critical because the Cotton Board would like to submit. They've actually indicated that they prepared the submission for content use, and we are trying to move very quickly on that regulation so they can get guidance on how to handle issues of content use. And then we do have regulations on exemption of GMOs. We have the threshold, so you need to clearly spell out what you do. How do you exempt if it's below the threshold? How do you handle that? The threshold of 0.9% in the product. Then we have several guidelines. I'll just give an example of two. Public participation, that one is critical. And then information sharing and access to justice with respect to GMOs. And then we also linked to content use. We have done a guideline. That one has already been adopted for field break and planned release of GMOs. Challenges. We do have a serious challenge of human resource, insufficient number of staff trained in the area of biotechnology and biosafety. That one is a challenge. Serious challenge of misinformation. Inadequate awareness on modern biotechnology and biosafety. Then we're also grappling with the process of getting specific legislative approval for proposed regulations. Inadequate infrastructure to effectively support GMO research. There's been a long time of little investment into the R&D infrastructure, especially in the agricultural sector, even veterinary, and generally in the R&D. So we think we do have that as a challenge. And then we do have a challenge, of course, is linked to one, absence of adequate in-country inspectors. This is very difficult to detect consignments that enter through unmanned entry points. Zambia has vast borderlines with neighbors that are at different stages with regard to GMO, and that is a problem. Then the last one is really, really a problem. The GMOs have been around for 17 years. Their import was being regulated by acts that have nothing to do with GMO. So we are facing serious startup challenges with interagency collaboration. I think that's my last slide. Thank you for your kind attention.
Your presentation said your regulations, the threshold level is 0.9%. Why 0.9%? Perhaps you can just elaborate.
I'll ask Dr. John to answer that. It's actually, the EU is 1% and Zambia is 0.9%. It should be, I'll ask, there should be a very good scientific reason for that. I'm not able to answer that question, I think. He's also running away from that question. These are standards that are set by different regions of the world. The EU has 1%, and ourselves we did adopt a percentage law, I think. Maybe it will help. At least I've failed one question. Malawi helped.
Ida is going to...
Mistaken, but it's interesting that your law covers pharmaceuticals. If you look at a lot of the other ones, the scope it doesn't include pharmaceuticals. So you're actually regulating recombinant proteins.
Come again?
Your law covers pharmaceuticals.
Yes, please.
Yes, if you look at other people's, it doesn't. So am I mistaken about that? Hmm? Yeah, it's always exempting pharmaceuticals. So you're going to get busy with vaccines and all of that, eh? Your insulins and your what?
The interesting thing is we are the interagency collaboration. We are really trying to exploit it, especially that the law has taken on a lot of fronts. So you need to have a lot of capacity around to be able to handle all those various aspects. We do have the Zambia Medicine Regulatory Authority. They take cognizance of the fact that while they're handling the issues of medicine, they need to interface with the Biosafety Act. And we do have people that are, if you check the composition of the Scientific Advisory Committee, we actually have people that are coming from the background of pharmacology. That was for that purpose. And this person specifically, we are targeting a person from the Zambia Medicine Regulatory Authority, just to create that link. Yeah, we may struggle to handle everything, so that's how come we have that kind of combination.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a short question, but perhaps it's a long answer, but well, the chair can. Because interestingly, you said in the MBA you have one person from a religious group. What religion is chosen and who does that?
Unfortunately, I'm not the minister. It's got a very simple answer. Unfortunately, I'm not the minister. There are two basically major religions in the country, Christian and then the minorities are there also. So you expect that the major will win. So the minister will always fall back on the major religious group. These groups have umbrella bodies, like the Christian Council of Zambia. It picks from there. We do have the Islamic group, of course. But I think they will not go to very, very minor groups. That may not work well for him. So he makes, and by the way, he does have two other persons he can appoint. So if he wants to balance power, he will get from the Christian and the other religious groups, just to make sure the institution is balanced. He hasn't viewed in the other spot for the two other persons.
Our framework, a GMO that produces a pharmaceutical will still fall under the GMO Act. And this is one of the things that we guide very carefully, because obviously there's overlap now between the GMO Act and health and pharmaceutical substances Act. So it is covered, but it's funny, if you import a bottle of insulin, it's not under the GMO Act, it's just under the Health Act. But if you bring in the organisms that produce, it's both.
Thank you. The good thing of being last, all what I wanted to present has been presented by Malawi, Tanzania, South Africa. So it's as good as I can say. Thank you so much. Okay. Maybe let me start by introducing myself. I am not from the field we are discussing. Biotechnology and biosafety, I'm an economist from Ministry of Agriculture, Mechanization and Irrigation Development. And on top of that, I am not an agricultural economist, but a pure economist. So my interaction with this critical field that we are looking at is through trade facilitation. Because in Ministry of Agriculture, I'm heading the section that looks at trade and marketing of agricultural commodities. And this section happens to be very critical when you're dealing with agricultural commodities. So in Zimbabwe, we have a committee where we sit trying to discuss trade facilitation as it relates to issues of SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary issues, where we are looking at importation and exportation of commodities. That's where we can meet these challenges of, say, GMO, what do we do with GMO? So in that committee, our Biosecurity Authority is a member, and we've been interacting quite well. And that's why they actually decided to choose me, just to give my name, to say this person must also get experience in what is happening in the biotechnology sector. Okay, now to my presentation, it's biotechnology and biosafety regulation in Zimbabwe. The overview presentation is just definition of biosafety, which I am least qualified to define it for you because you know it. I'm not going to dwell much on that one. The National Biosafety Framework, the mandate of the NBA, National Biosafety Authority of Zimbabwe, biosafety milestones in Zimbabwe, the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety, constraints in assimilation of biotechnology. That's the presentation. In Zimbabwe, biosafety entails risk assessment. And risk assessment is an obligation under international agreements like the Cartagena Protocol and national laws, which include the National Biotechnology Authority Act, Section 25. The National Biotechnology Framework. Zimbabwe's regulatory framework on biosafety dates back to 1990s, when the country's scientists approached the scientific liaison office in the office of the President and Cabinet, requesting that the government put in place legal measures to manage breakthroughs in modern technology, including biotechnology. And the scientists appreciated the critical role on cutting-edge science like modern biotechnology. They have realized the human health, environmental, national security, and socio-economic challenges that usually come with such breakthroughs. They felt a standard code of practice without a legal framework would not provide the necessary safeguards. So, to fast-track the regulatory process, it was agreed to amend the Research Act, which was being administered by the Scientific Liaison Office, and to allow for the regulation of modern biotechnology. The Research Act then was amended in 1998 so as to provide the management of potentially harmful technologies and the undertakings through safety bodies. To implement the new law, the Vice President developed and gazetted supporting regulations in 2000. The research as biosafety regulations. By the end of the same year, institutional arrangement to manage the research, development, application, import, export, sale, and use of modern biotechnology and its products was put in place. These interim arrangements allowed Zimbabwean scientists to undertake laboratory and field trials with the genetically modified organisms. And the framework as well was used to manage the import of food and feed containing GMOs. When the UNEP, that's United Environmental Program, project for building capacity for developing biosafety frameworks came online, Zimbabwe applied for the support and then revisited the international biosafety arrangements to come up with a more comprehensive and standalone regime. Using those funds, the government supported a comprehensive national policy on biosafe technology, and its safe use was developed in 2005. And the new Act of Parliament, the National Biotechnology Authority Act, was passed into law in 2006. The current National Biotechnology regulatory regime, that is the Biotechnology Authority Act of 2006 and its supporting guidelines, was developed as a means to implement the biotechnology and biosafety provisions contained in the National Biotechnology Policy and other national policy documents, and also to repeal earlier biosafety legal arrangements. So the Act was transformed, the Act transformed the Biosafety Board into the National Biotechnology Authority. Now, the mandate of the NBA is to regulate biotechnology research and development in Zimbabwe, to enforce standards and any regulations pertaining to biotechnology, to champion all national efforts towards biotechnology research, development, and management, to administer the Biotechnology Fund, and to manage the National Biosafety Clearinghouse. We have made some biosafety milestones in Zimbabwe, which are the legal framework and supporting guidelines that were put in place in 2006. Organizational structures, NBA is the major regulator. And we have public awareness and capacity building programs, policymakers awareness workshop on biotechnology, the official launch of the OFAB Zimbabwe chapter, oral evidence sessions, and BT Cotton